Okay, good morning everybody, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday morning as we are studying together Perashat Vayakhel. Our Perashah is usually read with other Perashiyot, with the Perashah called the Perashat Pekudei. But because this year has two Adars, so we have extra time to study the beauty and the riches and the Rechush Gadol of our Perashah. Vayakhel, my friends, the word Vayakhel, the opening word of our Perashah. Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat bnei Israel. What does that mean? Moshe is about to instruct and command the Jewish people about the donations that they should make to building the Mishkan. He has this beautiful project, this beautiful idea that God told him about, that they're going to build a temple and a sanctuary, a resting place for the presence. Anyone that wants to speak to Hashem, till now, where did the people go if they wanted to speak to Hashem? Anyone know? Where did the people go? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה baro. Till now, the people went to Ohel Moed, to Moshe's tent. But moving forward, if they want to speak to Hashem, they don't need to go to Moshe's tent. They're going to go to the Mishkan. So Moshe is about to tell them about the Mishkan, about this resting place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he begins the Perashah with the word Vayakhel. First, he assembles. And it's interesting that the Torah feels it necessary to tell us that he assembles the Jewish people. Moshe doesn't usually do a kehillah, Vayakhel. Usually when he speaks to them, he just tells them. He just tells them whatever he needs to tell them. Of course, he said it to everybody. What changes over here that he needs to tell it to them in a kehillah? So there's a few answers to this question. Number one, Moshe is reminding the Jewish people that the first and most important rule, if you want to preserve the Mishkan, if you want to keep the sanctuary of God, if you want to make sure you don't lose it, you must Vayakhel. There has to be a unity amongst the Jewish people. Vayakhel, unfortunately, is something that we don't always remember in history. Vayakhel, which means to gather together. Yaakov Avinu, when he wants to reveal the Ketz, when the Mashiach is coming, our rabbis tell us, Nistaleka mimeno shechina. He lost that prophecy on his deathbed, and he wasn't able to tell his children the date. But what does he then tell them? He then says, He'asefu, gather round, so that I can tell you, Et asher yikra etchem mecharit hayamim. This is chapter 49, pasuk 1. Vayikra Yaakov et banav vayomer He'asefu. He'asefu means to gather. Yaakov Avinu is not just telling his children to gather here, but he's telling them to gather in history, to gather forever. If we're going to be united and together, and we're going to be able to be happy one for another, and we're going to be able to only give blessings to one another, and we're going to be able to only think positively about each other and to give each other the benefit of the doubt, etc. If we're going to be united, then Mashiach will come. Yaakov Avinu is hinting to his children, I don't know the date, I lost the date, God took it away from me, but one thing I can tell you is that you can bring it today, if you are able to unite yourselves. So Vayakhel Moshe gathers the Jewish people to tell them that this is the first rule. If you want to make sure that the Mishkan that you're about to build is permanent. A beautiful idea. Rashi says, Vayakhel Moshe lemahorat Yom Kippurim. By the way, says Rashi, you know what the date of the year is? This took place the day after Yom Kippur. Ksheyarad min hahar. Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, last week we read about the Egel. He was up already for 40 days and 40 nights getting the first Torah. But when he came down, he saw the Egel, he broke the tablets. He went up for another 40 days to ask forgiveness. And then he went up for a third 40 days to bring the new tablets so that God could inscribe the 10 Commandments all over again on the second set of tablets. And he comes down on the 40th day, the third time. So 40, 40, 40. Do the math. From Shavuot, 120 days is going to lead you to Yom Kippur. So Moshe comes down on Yom Kippur, and today is when he gathers the people to instruct them about the building of the sanctuary, the building of the Mishkan. So just again, to know where we are in timeline, time-wise, and in space-wise. The Jewish people left Mizrahi on Pesach. Okay, let's go from the beginning. We left Egypt on Pesach, that we know. God split the sea. We go to Har Sinai, and now we're 3 months into our Exodus, 3 months out of Egypt. We get the Torah. That's the holiday of Shavuot. Okay, everyone with me? So we left on Pesach. A couple of months later, we get the Torah on Shavuot. We do the Egel 40 days after that. And then Moshe gets forgiveness for us on Yom Kippur. So now we are Yom Kippur at Har Sinai, 6 months after we left Mizrahi. Then they start building the temple. They start building the Mishkan, and this is where Moshe instructs them to build the Mishkan. So we're not even at the 1 year anniversary of our Exodus. Okay, just again, to put it in perspective. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly where we are, what's going on. It feels like forever, right? So it's only 5-6 months since we left. And now, Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe gathers the people. And Rashi says, this is 5 months after we left Mizrahi. This is Yom Kippur. Okay, the question obviously over here is, why does Rashi need to tell us what the date is? Why does he feel it's important? Rashi doesn't usually tell us dates. Okay? Any other parasha, Vayikra, Tzav, Kedoshim, all of the parashiot, as beautiful as they are, Rashi is not here to tell us the date of things. That's not usually what he does. Here, Rashi wants to tell us the date, and our commentaries try to understand why. There's a beautiful answer over here that's given. I forget who says it, but the idea is like this. Our rabbis tell us, "V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od." Moshe was the most humble person that ever existed. However, there is another interesting idea. Even though the Torah says he was the most humble, the Midrash tells us that there was actually someone more humble than Moshe. Anyone know? I know it sounds crazy, but there was someone that was actually more humble than Moshe. Who was more humble than Moshe? Shemuel HaNavi. Shemuel the prophet. Okay? Hillel is a good guess, but the Gemara says Shemuel. Why was Shemuel more humble, Because Moshe, when he would judge the people, he would make them come to him. Shemuel, when he would judge the people, he would go to them. Like the Pasuk says, Ubeto haramata. His house, wherever he went, he would take his house with him. He would go around judging the people. Usually you would think, someone says, Rabbi, you want to give us a class? No problem, I'm happy to give a class. Okay, could you come all the way here? Well, you want me to come all the way to you to give you a class? I'm willing to give you a class. I'm willing even not to charge. But you want me to come all the way to you? Get the kids and come to the shul and I'll give the class, right? But Shmuel's humility was such that he was willing to judge for free and go to them. It's an amazing level. By the way, the Pasuk says, Vayish Moshe Anav. How do you spell Anav? Anyone? Anav. Ayin, Nun, Yod, Vav. Anav. But the Pasuk spells it, Vayish Moshe Anav Me'od, Ayin, Nun, Vav. Missing the letter Yod, showing in a way that Moshe's humility is lacking. Because Moshe again made everyone come to him. Now we must ask the question. Asks the Mahari Asad, why did Moshe not go to the people? Why did Moshe make the people come to him? Answers the Mahari Asad, because Moshe was a king, like the Pasuk says, Vayhi bishurun melech, and we know that any person is allowed to forego their honor. As an example, we know as parents, there are certain rules for our children. Our children are not allowed to sit in our chair. Our children must stand up when we walk in the room, right? There's halachot of kibud avaim. Okay, it's important to know the laws for our parents and for our children. What if a parent says, it's okay, I forgo. I mochel, I forgive. I don't care if you sit in my chair. Is that allowed? A parent says to their child, from now on when I come in the room, please don't stand up. Is that allowed? Now again, these concepts maybe are very foreign to an American growing up in 2022. But ask your grandparents in old country, it was a no-brainer. The jiddo, the father that walked in the room, everybody stood up. Respect, quiet. There was respect for authority. Something that unfortunately we lost today. It's chaval that we lost it. It's a shame. It's a shame. Today you walk on the train. I don't take the train often, but when I do once in a while, I go on the train. Old lady walks in, nobody budges. Nobody stands up for her. Don't even think. It wasn't, by the way, even in my days when I was a kid growing up in high school. I'm not that old, okay? 10, 15 years ago, old person walks on the city bus, we all got up. Today, nobody flinches. It's a shame. This is where we are today, okay? The Gemara says, by the way, we should be, the comfort in this is that it means the Mashiach's coming, because the Gemara says in the end of Masechet Sotah that the signs, certain signs at the end of days, chutzpah yizgeh, there will be chutzpah. Chutzpah is the opposite of respect. There'll be a lot of chutzpah. Nobody's gonna respect the elders. So the only nechama, at least, it means that Mashiach's coming very soon, Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so a father, a mother, they're allowed to mochel, they're allowed to forgive. Don't stand up for me. Don't give me your chair. You could sit in my chair. You could call me by my first name. They're allowed. Okay. However, melech, a king, only exception, melech shemachal al kvodo en kvodo machul. A king's not allowed to forego his honor. Why? Because a king's honor is not his. King represents the community. The king represents the nation. You don't have the right to belittle yourself because your prestige, your dignity is really dignity for the entire nation. And therefore, technically, since Moshe is a king, Moshe is not allowed to forego his honor. En kevodo machul. He's not allowed to do what Shemuel did. Shemuel had the luxury of being able to be humble and go from person to person, from tent to tent, and judge them in their town. And he says, don't come to me, I'll come to you. He was allowed to be humble in that sense, in that regard. But Moshe wasn't allowed. Moshe had the status of a king. However, we do know that Moshe lost his status as king when the Jewish people did Chet HaEgel. What does God say? The famous two words, Lech red, go down because your nation is sinning. And obviously the question is, why does God need to tell him to go down? If you're on the top of a mountain, you don't need to say go down, you just need to say go. All right? There's only one way to go from here, down. God should have just said go. Go, your nation is sinning. What's go down? It's redundant. The answer is go down from your greatness, from your status. You're no longer a king. Because the person, the gadol, the leaders of the generation are proportionate to the level of the people. The leaders can only go so high as the people allow them to. If the people are here, the leader could go here. If the people are higher, the rabbis can go higher. The leaders are proportionate. When the people drop, Moshe must drop. Lech red, God says to Moshe, you're no longer a king. Moshe loses his status as melech. He was demoted. Okay? However, when does Moshe regain his status as king? When does he get promoted? When they get forgiven for the Chet HaEgel. When do they get forgiven? They get forgiven on Yom Kippur. And so look at the opening words of our parasha. Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe gathers the people. Now we may ask, well, why does he gather them to him? Why didn't he do like Shmuel? He go to them. And the answer is because Moshe is a king. Moshe cannot go to them. He must demand respect as a king, and they must come to him. But then we may ask, wait, 1 second, but didn't he lose that status as king? Moshe is not a king anymore because of the Egel. Says Rashi, this was right after Yom Kippur. And because it's right after Yom Kippur, Moshe Rabbeinu is now a king again, and therefore he must bring the people to him. Amazing, amazing idea. By the way, there is only one time that Moshe went to the people. Where is the word Vayelech used? On the end of his life. Perashat Vayelech, right? Vayelech Moshe Vaydaber Tedavarim Ha'ele El Kol Yisrael Vayelech Moshe. Moshe on the last day of his life goes to the people. For every single day of his life, they had to come to him because, again, like we explained, he was a king and he couldn't forego his honor. But on the last day of his life, why? Our rabbis say, "En shlita beyom hamavet." There is no shlita. What's lishlot? To rule. There is no rulership on one's last day, and therefore, even Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a king, but he lost that on the last day of his life. And therefore, on the last day, he was allowed to go to the people once again, being the humble person that he was. Vayomer alehem ben me'ah ve'esrim shana anochi hayom. I am today 120 days. It was Moshe Rabbeinu's last day of his life. Like they say, the famous joke, what do you tell somebody on their 120th birthday? Have a nice day. Right? Have a nice day. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu is 120 and it's the last day of his life, and therefore he was allowed, there's no rulership, it's the last day. That's the day of Malach HaMavet, so to speak. And therefore Moshe went to them. Vayelech Moshe. Okay, but something else we know happened on the day after Yom Kippur. Moshe gathers the people, but what else happens? L'machorat Yom HaKippurim. Anyone know? What else happens the day after Yom Kippur? Besides gathering the people to announce that they're going to have this beautiful new project? Something else interestingly happens. Go back, please. Anyone? Okay. Go back, please, to Perashat Yitro. Remember Yitro? Who was Yitro? Who was Yitro? Yitro was Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law. Right? Remember when Moshe is in the desert and they get the Torah? It says, Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian. So Yitro hears about the splitting of the sea. He hears about Amalek. He hears about everything. And now Yitro comes to join the Jewish people in the desert. And the Pasuk says, chapter 18, Pasuk 13, Vayhi mimma horat vayeshev Moshe lishpot et ha'am. And on the next day, what happens? Moshe sits to judge the Jewish people. Says Rashi, next day of what? Motza'e Yom HaKippurim Haya. It was the day after Yom Kippur. And what is the next day meaning? The next day from when he came down the mountain. Says Rashi, you know what else happened on the day after Yom Kippur? Moshe comes down and he has a very busy schedule ahead. He comes down from the mountain, he has to Vayakhel, he has to gather the people to tell them about the Mishkan, and he starts judging them. And we must ask, why do these two events go hand in hand? Why does Moshe on the same day judge the people and also announce the Mishkan? The answer is given, beautiful idea. And that is, once you are donating to the Mishkan, once people are giving money, it is super important that the money be what we call kosher money. The money has to be their money. It cannot be stolen. A person wants to give money for a holy endeavor. They have to make sure the money is holy. The money is really theirs. The money is properly theirs. If the money is stolen, that money nothing good will ever come out of that money. And so Moshe wants to make sure we're building a holy Mishkan for God. We have to make sure. There are many rabbis that when they came to collect for their yeshivot, for their institutions, if they knew that the person was one who earned this money in not proper ways, whether by working on Shabbat or being dishonest or through a vocation that was forbidden according to Torah law, they wouldn't accept a donation from that person. This is forbidden money. I cannot accept this. I cannot build an institution that's going to be built on not kosher money. There's no way the institution is going to last. Amazing. So this is the spirituality of the kesef, of the money that was donated. There's an amazing story of a fellow when he was on his deathbed, a simple Jew. And Rabbi Twersky brings a story. And on his deathbed, he calls his son over and he leaves in the will. He says, when I pass away, I want you to make sure to bury me and pay for all of the expenses for the shrouds and for the burial. All of it should be taken from the money that's in the bag, that's in the bottom drawer. Only use that money for my burial expenses. And the father explained, although I tried very hard in my life to be honest, you never know, maybe I made a mistake, maybe I ended up, being dishonest, maybe I took advantage of somebody in business. I don't know. I did my best, but who knows? But one thing's for sure. I am a Kohen. Because my father is a Kohen. Because his father, all the way back to Aharon, I was a Kohen. And because I'm for sure 100% a Kohen, I know that the money in this bag, this is money that was given to me for Pidyon Haben. People that have for firstborn baby boy must redeem that money from the Kohen. And I've been called many times to be the Kohen to Podeh, to redeem that child. All the money in this bag is money that I received for the Pidyon Haben. This money I know is kosher money. Maybe, just maybe, if I appear in the heavenly courts, dressed in clothing, in shrouds that are purchased honestly with honest money, maybe I will have a chance on Yom Hadin, on the Day of Judgment. Unbelievable. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the people. Vayakhel Moshe, we're going to build a Mishkan, but we got to make sure that the money is actually ours, rightfully ours. So what does he do? Vayeshev, he sits and he judges the people, making sure that the money that they're going to donate is actually properly theirs. So that's lesson 1 in tzedakah, to make sure we want to give, we got to give. We got to make sure that the money that we're giving is kosher money, like they say. A lot of times we justify doing things that are inappropriate because we're going to end up giving that money. It's going to use for tuition. I'm going to use it to help the synagogue. I'm going to use it because I help Hatzalah. I help SBH. I help all these amazing organizations. But we have to be very, 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 very careful not to allow that the ends justify the means. We can't allow, just because we want to do good things with it, to now do not good things to earn that money. Person sometimes may work on Shabbat and justify and say, it's okay, I'm going to give 10% to tzedakah. So $100,000 to the yeshiva, it's worth it, right? No, it's not worth it. Look what Moshe says. If it's not kosher money, we don't want it. Nothing good could ever come out of that money. So that's lesson number 1. Okay, another lesson when it comes to tzedakah. Chapter 35, Pasuk 4. Right in the beginning. Vayomer Moshe. Moshe says, El kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemor, to all the people saying, Zeh hadavar, this is the word, Asher tziva Adonai lemor, this is what God said. And then he speaks about, bring a terumah, bring a donation. One word here is problematic, lemor. Do you notice the word lemor? Again, let's read the sentence in Hebrew. Zeh hadavar asher tziva Adonai lemor. This is what God said to say. What do you mean? Lemor, to say. Not to say. This is what God said. You should start talking. Say what he said. What's the repetitive? This is what God said. Lemor, to say. What's the extra lemor? Usually, and this is a very important lesson. Again, everyone writing this down. Lesson number 2 when it comes to charity. The Rambam, Halachot Tzedakah, believe it or not, there's laws of charity, right? It's not just give whatever you like. There's laws of how and who and priorities. Rambam writes in the laws of Matanot Aniyim, the laws of charity. Chapter 10. Chayavin anu lizaher b'mizvah tzedakah. We have to be very careful in charity more than any other positive commandment. Look at this. Be most careful in charity more than any other positive commandment. That's a crazy statement. As careful as we all are to make sure we go hear the Megillah and we go hear the shofar and we make sure to light Shabbat candles, the Rambam says be more careful to give tzedakah. Okay? Keep going. Anyone that's stingy when it comes to charity, Rambam gives them all the nice adjectives. Okay? Next. Halacha Daled, Halacha 4. Kol hanoten tzedakah le'ani besever panim ra'ot. Anyone that gives charity sour-faced, not excited to give. You give sometimes someone money, but you make them feel like dirt. Here, take it. Go. Afilo noten lo 1,000 zehuvim. Even if you give the guy $1,000, ibed zechuto, you lost the merit. Ela noten lo besever panim yafot. We must give charity with a smile. Besimcha, happily. Mitonen imo, to empathize with the poor person. That's another level. How many times we give, all right, go, I gotta go. No, sit for 10 seconds. Cry with the guy. I'm so sorry you're going through this. This is all I can help, but I hope you have tremendous siyata d'shmaya. Give the person a bracha. May Hashem give you refuah shlema. May Hashem change your mazal. Sha'al ha'ani mimecha ve'en be'yadcha klum. If an ani asked money from you and you don't have, oh, I didn't bring my wallet. Well, sir, I have a credit card machine. I didn't bring my credit card either. Payisehu bidvarim. Comfort them with words. You can't give them money, give them a good word. Ve'asur ligor be'ani. You're not allowed to get angry with a poor person. Or even to raise your voice, to scream, chaz v'shalom. Because as it is, the guy's heart is already broken. And you want to break it even more. Chaz v'shalom. Oy lo. Rambam says, woe to the person that embarrasses the ani. Oy lo. Woe to the person who embarrasses the poor person. Next. Shmone ma'alot yesh b'tzedakah. There are 8 levels of charity. One above the next. What's the highest level? What's the best way to give someone? Anyone know? Best way to give? Best way to give someone is to give them without anyone knowing is not the best way to give. Okay, good guess, but it's not the best way. We'll come back to that in a minute. The best way to give is actually to give them a job. Don't give them charity, give them a job, or give them a loan that can help them start a company, start a business. That's the highest level. Why is that higher than tzedakah? Because when you give tzedakah, the guy feels embarrassed, like he's a beggar. But when you give him a loan, he saves his face, he saves his dignity. You're preserving their honor. What's it to be embarrassed of? When you give, you'd say you hire somebody. Let's say there's someone that you know needs money. So you could give them $1,000 or $10,000 a month, whatever you want to help them. Or you can give them a job that you don't really need them to do. Say, hey, listen, I need a chauffeur to drive things around for me. Could you do me this, and that? And you're giving them the same 1,000, but at least now the person feels like they deserve the 1,000. So that's a much higher level. You're saving them what's called embarrassment. Instead of feeling like a taker, now they feel like they earned the money. That's the highest level, actually. So to bring a guy in your business, a partner or an employee, doesn't matter what, then he won't need to even ask. Okay. Next level. After, if you can't give the guy a job, let's say there's no way to help him out like that. Okay. Then we go into the realm of tzedakah. Lo yada lemi natan ve'lo yada ha'ani mi lakach. Then to give what we call secretively. No one knows who you gave it to. No one knows who it was given from. And this is mitzvah lishma. There was a chamber in the Beit HaMikdash called Lishkat Chashayim. Chashay is secret. Hayu hatzadikim notnin ba bechashay. People would just throw money there and they would leave. And then the aniyim would come and take. No one knows who gave, no one knows who took. And this is what we have, by the way, in the synagogue. In the synagogue, we give money, we put it in the kuppah, we put it in the box, in the pushka, and you go home, you don't know what's going to be with that money. And then an ani comes to the synagogue. We have over here every single day many people coming to the synagogue, and we write them out a check, $150 or whatever it is. I think we have a set amount that we give, and we don't know. The rich people don't know who's getting it. The poor people don't know who gave it. That's a very, very high level, and the Rambam says that's beautiful. That's what we call secrets, to be baseter. Then less than that is that the giver knows who's getting it, but the ani doesn't know who he got it from. So as an example, a third level will be, let's say you know a family needs, so you drop every Friday an envelope with money under the door, so they don't know who you are, but you know who they are. So that's the third level. Amazing. Fourth level is the other way around. The ani knows who the giver is, but the giver doesn't know who the recipient is. Okay. And then the next one is that they both know each other, but you wait for them to ask. The next one is that you give before they even ask. Okay? By the way, it's important to try to give before the guy asks, to try to be creative. We spoke about this in the past. To look for ways to give tzedakah, not to wait for the guy to come to you and to, you know the guy's in shul, well, you know why he's in shul. You know that he's standing there to ask for tzedakah. Don't wait for the guy to feel like a loser and come and say, hey, please. Run over to them and say, hi, sir, is there any way I can help you? Go to them. Be active. So that's very nice level also. Okay? We spoke one time about Hashem's name. Yud K Vav K. Yud is the coin. Small, tiny coin. That's the Yud. Hey are the five fingers of the giver. Yud, Hey. And then Vav is the arm of the receiver. And Hey is the hand of the receiver. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. It's important that the order is following the name of God. Yud, K, Vav, K means first extend your hand to give the money, and then he should extend his hand to receive the money. It's very important that the order should remain like that. God forbid, if the Ani has to come and ask us, then the order is reversed. Then the Vav, Hey is first. That's not good. So here, tzedakah needs to be done secretively. Tzedakah needs to be done, no one knows. And that's usually the right way. That's what the Rambam just taught us. Don't know, don't tell. You give money, shh. When you publicize, you lose a lot of the merit. Okay? A guy once came to me in shul, and he says, Rabbi, I want to donate and I want to sponsor a kidney. They were having this organization that helps people to attain kidneys. Amazing organization called Renewal. Okay, my good friend AJ. And they help people get a kidney. Miracles, what they do. So, the guy came to me, he wanted to make a donation, $20,000 to sponsor a kidney transplant. But he said, Rabbi, I'm going to give it, but don't say out loud. Just say matanat yado. Say he gives anonymous. Whatever he wants. It's the cop-out usually. You know, matanat yado means, whatever. You know, whatever I want. $5. Okay. So then he sat down and then I thought about it. And I called him over. I said to this fellow, no can do. I said, what do you mean? I said, it's a mistake. So what do you mean? I want to be secretive. I said, it's nice to be secretive, but, and here's what the Rashba says, you only need to be secretive when you're giving to a specific individual. There, you should be quiet about your giving. But says the Rashba, if you're giving to an organization, then to the contrary, you should publicize what you're giving, because then you're not embarrassing anyone. The organization's not embarrassed. It's not a person. And you're publicizing what you did, so now you're encouraging other people to give like you. I said to the guy, you're going to give secretively, but no one else is going to know that you gave that. Instead, I think you should give out loud, set the bar high, set the tone, and maybe you'll get the ball rolling. And the person was hesitant. No, Rabbi, I convinced him. I said, you got to do it. He said, okay. Let's call this guy Joe, okay? So Joe goes up for the aliyah, and finally finishes the aliyah. Misha berach avotenu hakedoshim, Avraham, Yitzchak, Vayakhel, hu yibarech, Joe, anonymous, and shemit nadev, how much would you like to donate? And he's like, oh, Rabbi, are you sure about this? And I'm like, yes, Joe, I'm sure about this. He's like, okay. And I said out loud, sponsoring a kidney transplant for Renewal. And everyone's like, wow, amazing. Hazaku Baruch, L'chayeh, all the people. And then he goes down and he looks at me, he says, okay, Hazaku Baruch, Rabbi. He sits down. Anyways, next guy goes up. True story. Next guy goes up. Goes to Aliyah. Misha berach avotenu hakedoshim. How much would you like to donate? This guy's thinking, he says, you know what? Put me down for another kidney just like Joe did. So this is an amazing example that sometimes you can't be secretive about your giving. Sometimes you should be, but sometimes you need to publicize. Let's say there's a organization that's having a dinner, a parlor meeting. They're trying to raise. You shouldn't be secretive. You should stand up. Put me down. Create a trend. Make it cool to want to give. Set the tone. Just like there's peer pressure for bad, there's peer pressure for good. Sometimes you need that first guy to get it rolling, and then people will follow suit. And that's what the Parashah is trying to tell us. Look at the pasuk one more time. Ze hadavar asher tziva Adonai lemor. God says Moshe, when you're giving, make sure lemor. What does lemor mean? Make sure you say out loud, 505, 20,000, 100,000. Say it out loud and encourage the other people that are around you to give. That is what is being hinted in these amazing, amazing words. Because again, sometimes you shouldn't give out loud. But here, when it comes to donating for the Mishkan, this is a communal organization. This is not private. There's no embarrassment here. You're not embarrassing everyone if you say out loud. So here, you should give publicly, and don't worry about being humble. Don't worry about wanting to stay anonymous. There's times for that. This is not one of those times. Beautiful. That's lesson number 2 in charity. A third and final lesson, my friends. And we fast forward, Pasuk says, Vayakhel ha'am mehavi. The people stopped bringing. Okay? There was too much. Okay? Let's find the Pasuk over here. This is going to be Pasuk 6. Chapter 36, Pasuk 6. The people said, there's too much money. Okay? I don't know if this ever happened again in history, that someone stopped collecting. Too much, guys, we don't need any more, right? Okay, but that's what Moshe did. He said, Ish ve'isha al ya'asu od melacha, please, no one bring any more. Okay, Vayakhel ha'am mehavi. What does that mean? Pasuk 6. And the people were restrained from bringing. Okay, now if you have a fancy chumash, or maybe if you're using an online type of app or something, a website, so take a look at our parasha. Okay, again, let's open up to chapter 36, Pasuk 6, and watch this. If you have extra commentaries, there's a commentary called the Baal HaTurim. Okay, Baal HaTurim, who wrote it? Who wrote the Baal HaTurim? The Tur, right? There's a big rabbi called Rabbi Yaakov, the son of the Rosh. He wrote a commentary he wrote a halakha book that's very famous called the Tur. He also wrote a book on Chumash called Baal HaTurim. Look what he says. Vayakhel shtayim. There's only 2 times in the entire Tanakh that the word Vayakhel appears. Hacha, once here, the people stopped bringing money. Ve'idach, anyone know? Let's play a game. If you're without peeking in the Baal HaTurim. Where's the only other time it says Vayakhel in the Tanakh? Okay, so this is going to be in Bereshit, chapter 8, Pasuk 2. So let's open that up. Okay, anyone know what's the context over there? This is by the Mabul. After the Mabul came for 150 days and all the things, then Vayisakeru ma'ayenot tehom va'arubot hashamayim. Then God stopped the rain. Vayakhel hageshem min hashamayim, and there was no more rain. Says the Baal HaTurim, there are only 2 times that the word Vayakhel appears. Once by the money given, no more money was given, and then Vayakhel hageshem. What is the connection between the rain and the people giving? And there's many answers to this. One answer, and this is what the Baal HaTurim says, this is why the rabbis were doresh, shehayu yordim lahem avanim tovot umargaliyot im haman. Where did they get the stones that they donated? The Nesiim, where did the stones come from? They gave stones, right? For the breastplate. Where did the stones? They didn't get stones. Where was the stones? So it says it came down with the man. Vehevium lindikat mishkan. Vayakhel hageshem perush ha'ananim shmeviim hageshem. Mishikalu lehavi ha'avanim atavot az kalu ha'am lehavi. So the rain brought, the man brought, the clouds brought the stones. Okay, he makes that connection. But there is another connection. Unfortunately, human nature is that when the money's coming in, then we're giving. We're happy to give. But sometimes when the money stops, when the bracha stops, Vayakhel hageshem, when the rain stops, rain represents bracha. When the bracha stops coming down, so unfortunately, the first thing that people stop doing, the first place that they cut is the tzedakah. Here was a person living large, $1 million a year, and they realized with this type of budget salary, I could afford 4 vacations, I could afford a Pesach, I could afford my kids in these schools, I could afford these after-school programs, and I could afford to give $100,000 to charity. And then something happens and they have a bad year. Corona hits or whatever hits. And now $1 million turns into 600, 700,000. Right? Nebach, Hazit. And this person now has to start cutting corners. Where are you gonna stop? Where are you gonna cut? You're gonna cut here, you're gonna cut there. Unfortunately, many people, the first place that they cut from is the tzedakah. And the 100,000 of tzedakah goes down. The 4 vacations remain 4 vacations. And the Pesach remains Pesach. And the trip remains the trip. And the after school remains the after school. And all of the extras remain. But the first thing that they remove from their yearly, from their budgeting is the tzedakah. We have to remember that a person never loses from giving tzedakah. Take a look at the Rambam, going back to the laws of tzedakah, chapter 10, halacha bet. Le'olam en adam ma'ani min hatzedakah. A person never becomes poor from giving charity. Velo davar ra velo hezek niglal bishvil hatzedakah. And a person can never get hurt by giving tzedakah. Sometimes we forget this. And we feel like, well, if I'm making less, then I should give less, because if I give so much tzedakah, it's gonna hurt me. I can't afford to give so much. And again, if a person cannot afford to give it, and it's gonna really cause them to start needing to beg, of course they shouldn't give. We're not talking about that. But sometimes we can give. And we can even give the same amount. But it would cause us to squeeze a little bit in other areas. Says the Rambam, don't forget, you never lose. And this is the final reminder when it comes to tzedakah, to make sure that we're always committed and that we're always giving happily besimcha. The more we give, the more we're going to receive. There is one pasuk in the Navi, it says over there, Ani Rishon ve'ani Aharon. God said, I am first and I am last. And our rabbis expounded this pasuk al derech hadrash, in a joking way, where God bemoans the fact and he says, unfortunately, when people need to start cutting from their expenses, Ani Rishon, I am the first to be cut. Instead of them taking away a vacation, they take away giving charity. Instead of them maybe driving a smaller car, they start taking away from charity. Always Ani Rishon, I'm the first to get affected when a person's parnasah gets hit. And then when it's the other way around, when a person makes a lot of money, they first make sure to afford all of the extras. And then if there's extra funds, they'll give it. Ani Aharon, I am the last to receive on the person's good fortune. So again, it's more al derech melitza, not a literal interpretation, but that is the unfortunate reality. So these are some lessons that we take from tzedakah. Always to remember, number one, that our money that we give do not justify inappropriate behavior and method just because we're going to want to do something good with it. That's not okay. We must make sure that the money that we're giving is proper money, it's kosher money. Number two, there are times to be secretive, but there are times to publicize our giving. And number three, that our tzedakah should always be the priority, the first thing that we give, and the last expense that we remove, if God forbid need ever be. We should be zocher in the merit of tzedakah, to always be giving, and giving, always to all the worthy causes, to all the worthy organizations. Amen. Okay, we'll stop over here, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful, amazing day ahead. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.